It's official, ladies and gentlemen. We have ourselves a Dos Horsio Ratio, as the Spanish say, for the Premier League title. Man United falling away, sadly. And the fallout will reveal that. And Newcastle United, should they be concerned? We'll talk about that. We're going to talk about that a little bit later on. But this week revealed a lot of things. We found out who the true title challengers are and who aren't quite up for it, as I said. This week on The Fallout, we're going to tell you why Manchester City and Arsenal are the only contenders. Before I get into the video, if you've noticed, we're trying to do that a little bit more. And I'm trying to make it as good as possible, trying to invest in the channel. The way we can invest in it is by getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So if you enjoy the content and the vision of the channel as well, then please do consider hitting the subscribe button. The bigger we get, the better we'll be. I promise. Man City 3, Wolves 0, an XG of 2.63 to 0.83. Pep's crazy tactics finally working here. There was a sharpness and willfulness to City's performance against Wolves. The 3-1-2-4 formation that he deployed finally really worked. But why was that? Well, it boiled down to a few different things. Firstly, after Pep called out the players recently, which I actually absolutely loved, and I think he's in a very unique position where, as champions of the country, 4 out of the last 5, he needed to jolt them. And I think he really did get that jolt from them, because recently they've looked quite jaded, you know, and by calling them out, they were far more up for it against Wolves than they have been in their previous matches. You really did see that, and it looks like they were a lot more switched on than they were in the first half against Spurs. And that is often the problem with games of football. And often the message at half-time is, can we do what we're trying to do here, but quicker? Now we understand the bedding of the game. Can we do it quicker? And Man City should be able to do it quicker than anyone if they're in the right mindset. And that's what Pep Guardiola was doing. And I thought it was really smart. The tactical reason behind why they perform so well is a little bit more nuanced, right? So the first important thing City did was throw numbers into the box as often as they could for the first goal. And a lot of times during the match, there were about 5, maybe sometimes more players in the box, and outnumbered Wolves in their own box. From an individual perspective, I thought the instructions set to them by Pep was spot on in a game that could have been really awkward for them against a Wolves side who we'll talk about, who I think will be fine. Grealish looked really great at times on that left-hand side. He was given license to take the shot as much as he wanted to, something that I think is a little bit alien. Actually, even in my video yesterday talking about Arteta and what he's doing with Arsenal, I feel like Arteta gives his team a bit more free rein. But actually, in this game, you could see Grealish getting a couple of shots off, which was nice. Nice to see, because I think with so many bodies in and around the box these days, sometimes you've got to take that shot that little bit earlier, a bit like Saka with the goal that he got. That license to take the shot as often as possible resulted in him having 3 shots, and ultimately it was very unlucky that he didn't score, because he had some great attempts actually at the Wolves goal. He was also given a lot of space due to Kevin De Bruyne having a free role and popping up all over the final third. This meant that Grealish often had time to make decisions and caused havoc on the left-hand side. Gundogan's another player that we need to talk about. So important over the last few years for them, and was super important in this game as well. I love Bernardo Silva, but when Bernardo Silva plays, he often is, he's sort of more conservative in how he likes to receive the ball. Gundogan, on the other hand, he sort of takes chances and makes runs into the box, which was a key part of City's success over the last few years. And his willing runs into the box saw City win a penalty, whilst it also meant that Haaland was sort of harder to pick up in those quick-fire open play moments instead of when they completely flooded the box. His overall performance was also brilliant, making 10 recoveries for the team. Gundogan has to stay in this side as he offers a lot more balance in the midfield, and he sort of dislodges some of the centre-backs who are focusing on Haaland. You've got Man City players who are focusing on Haaland, and Gundogan just offers that little bit of nuance in terms of his late runs that are sort of awkward, but also very brave, I guess. Maybe not even brave, just daring. And I know that Haaland scored a hat-trick in this game, but it was the overall performance of the team which allowed him to do this. And by only playing 3 defenders, Man City are able to have 6 players supporting Haaland. This means that it doesn't matter if he doesn't link the play or get involved in the build-up. In fact, they want him to stay away as much as possible. And this is one of the main reasons why City have sacrificed a defender at times this season in order to have that extra midfielder, and it finally worked. Wolves weren't that bad. They weren't as bad as the scoreline suggested, in my opinion. And although City had most of the possession, Wolves were still able to engineer 10 shots, which doesn't sound like a huge amount. But, you know, against Man City, I think that's decent. That's pretty impressive. And this is a Wolves side that have just been so toothless up top. And so the fact that they are looking to engineer those chances, yes, only one of those shots was on target, and that's really, really disappointing, of course. But I think Wolves are attacking... But I think the Wolves are improving their attack week on week here, and I think they're going to be absolutely fine under Lopetegui. And in terms of relegation, I think they'll just sail into the sunset. And here's an early call for you. Wolves will beat someone by 3 goals or more before the end of the season. You're going to have some goals, Wolves. Can you believe it? Try not to cry. Arsenal 3, Man United 2, and XG 3.25 for Arsenal, 0.36 for Man United. Again, look, we talk about XG a lot. It actually felt a little bit tighter than that. Maybe the sort of the game state of when the goals occurred made a big difference here, but Arsenal got some sauce. I don't know what they're putting in those Prime bottles they're selling there for a reasonable price, actually. Probably a good reason to get down there, actually. But the performances that Arsenal are churning out this season are leading me to believe that something's happening here. Performance enhancers, maybe. Say it first. Probably joking. Nah, yeah, I'm definitely joking. But seriously, this was the performance of champions by Arsenal. Winning late. The teams that win leagues win late. This match felt like Man City against Leicester, where Company just walloped that ball into the top corner. You knew something was kind of happening, and they needed to win. They had to win, and they did win. The second half is where Arsenal came into their own for me, with how sustained their pressure was and how it didn't fizzle out. That was the big thing here. They were calm in terms of getting the chance that they needed to and working that moment. And to be able to maintain this level of attacking dominance for 45 minutes is super difficult for Arsenal to do against any team, in particular Man United, who've been really, really good defensively. And I thought had that energy in the first half, but it sort of left them in the second half. They got beat down by them in the later rounds. It was one of those ones. And Arsenal had 63 touches in the Man United box, which is the most touches a team has had in any opposition box out of any Premier League game this season. And that's a Man City stat. The fact that that isn't a Man City stat is both pretty mind-blowing, to be honest, but also incredibly revealing. And I think a lot of this came down to the Manchester United setup. We see from the average positions that by the end of it, they were playing a flat midfield 3 because of the pippity-pop nature of Arsenal and the fact that Fernandes couldn't get out to Partey because, again, he's always got those 2 guys either side of him who are able to play the ball and he's quickly shifting across. And so that difference between having that, that triangle there, or diamond, triangle, wasn't it, because there's 3 of them, of Fernandes higher up and on him, they weren't able to do that because they kept moving the ball side to side so quickly. That midfield 3 was, of course, to prevent any kind of control for Arsenal in zone 14. It's an area that they've exploited a lot of teams in this season, but the repercussions of this was that they had to allow Antony and Rashford to stay high to allow them to have any kind of an attacking threat. And this meant that the fullbacks were able to be targeted by the Arsenal wingers time and time again, because of that sort of compact nature of the back line of Man United, because of the concerns of getting picked apart by the width and the ability to play in between the gaps. Their heat maps here demonstrate how often they got on the ball in the Man United box, and with no help, Luke Shaw was forced to back off Saka at all times, which allowed Saka to make entry after entry into the Man United penalty area. This led to both Saka and Martinelli having 5 shots apiece against Manchester United. One player who didn't have freedom but still managed to excel was Eddie Nketiah, who, again, if you have a look at my match reaction, also got match highlights from the game if you want to check out both those videos if you're an Arsenal fan or a Man United fan, of course, as well. But Eddie Nketiah, we spoke about how he deserved a little bit of respect because he put in a Van Nistelrooy-like performance against Man United. Nketiah worked himself into brilliant areas which saw him rack up a total of 1.85 XG from only 3 shots. This displays how well he did to sniff out those high-value chances and then went that step further and, of course, took those opportunities, which he didn't do last week in the North London derby. For Man United, this game was probably just a tiny step too far for them at the minute, especially without Casemiro. No Casemiro meant that they probably altered their tactics to make life a little bit easier for Scott McTominay, who I'm not sure if Ten Hag totally trusts. And this did take away from Bruno's sort of efficiency and ability to get forward as well and offer something and offer help to the rest of the attacking unit. And if Casemiro is available for selection, I don't think that this game is as one-sided. I also think Man United might offer that little bit more going forward. And therefore, Man United fans, although you're not in a title race, that is official, there is nothing to worry about. And you should be quietly delighted with the season so far, in my opinion. But maybe you're not. Let me know in the comments down below. West Ham 2, Everton 0, an XG of 2.27 for West Ham. And wait for it, 0.55 for Everton. Both of these sides went for a 5 at the back, but there were key differences. It's now 8 Premier League games without a win for Everton as the problems pile up for pretty much everyone involved with this football club. At the time of recording, Lampard is still the manager, but it looks like there's going to be talks to occur this Monday, of course, and we will see if he's still in the job by the end of the week. The main problems, but not the only problems, were in attack for Everton in this game. Everton lacked a cutting edge going forward with no penetrative runs being made. Everton had 66% possession, 66, but they failed to create a single big chance. Now, why was that? Well, let's have a look at the passing networks because it tells us why to an extent. The amount of sideways passes in the midfield, it meant that whilst Everton retained possession, they weren't a threat. And this has to boil down to a lack of attacking instructions from Lampard. Frank Lampard isn't the sole person at fault here. I truly believe that. And he's clearly a decent guy. But can he find the intangibles to get this team moving? Because there's enough good players there for them to create a lot more. And if you've got 66% possession, you've got to be knocking down the door a little bit, you know? And therefore, this defeat has to fall on him. Now, if we have a look at West Ham's network, it resembles a team with a far better idea of how they're going to attack. Antonio as high up as possible as an outlet, and they used to exploit that as much as possible against Everton. And maybe, you know, bringing Antonio back into the fold, it might be something there where they just, at least in a pressure game at home, they kind of knew what he would do, and they reverted to type a little bit. Of course, that JaackMaate has been in the side recently, and they want him to be the future, but you do get a complete performance from the fact that Antonio can come short, hold up the ball, but can also run into those channels as well, which JaackMaate can do as well, but they just don't seem to be using him so far, and I think they know that they can do with Antonio. West Ham also looked like they had a lot more energy and an actual plan as to how they attacked, which is a positive considering that that's been a huge area for them in terms of their struggles so far this season. Having said this, all West Ham had to do was play simple 1-2s down the left, and it sliced through Everton pretty quickly in the first half. The juxtaposition between West Ham and Everton's wing-backs was also where this game was won and lost. Seamus Coleman, who played as a right wing-back, is averaging 0.09 key passes per 90, but is being asked to be an attack-minded wing-back in this formation. This means that Coleman has only made 1 key pass this season for Everton from 9 matches. To put that into context, Emerson for West Ham got forward brilliantly in this game, registering 18 touches in the final third, and he made 2 key passes himself in this game alone. West Ham fans and Everton fans, I'd love to hear your appraisal of the team's performance. Can you see any hope? If you're an Everton fan, does Frank Lampard need to go? And West Ham fans, does that mean that David Moyes is safe, or do you still need to see a little bit more? What were your highlights and your lowlights from this game? Let me know in the comments down below. And that goes for all fans of all teams. Off you go. Leicester 2, Brighton 2, 0.99 to 2.14. It was a clash of styles in this game at the King Power. It is the King Power, isn't it? I'm really rubbish with stadiums. It was a really good match to watch. Both styles clashing throughout the 90 minutes. Leicester, they countered well at times, but did lack a little bit of sharpness when it came to the final third. And is that through a lack of quality? Leicester City fans, talk to me. I do still believe that they're sort of going backwards to go forwards. I think they're sticking before they twist in the summer. That is my hunch when it comes to Leicester City, because you're not going to invest so much in a training ground and all of those other elements to not then go back to the squad and sort it out. But with a front three of Mark Goldbridge, who came on in the 35th minute, who actually scored a goal, but it was cancelled out, Jamie Vardy and Harvey Barnes there, it just doesn't... It's not totally inspiring me right now, because I like Harvey Barnes, but he doesn't seem to be able to totally finish. Jamie Vardy doesn't seem to be able to sort of get past the XG numbers like he used to. Do you know what I mean? He used to be such a sort of troll for FPL managers and score those goals without having too many chances. But it's just not there. Maybe that's because the whole system isn't really clicking at this moment in time. And because of that, I don't think that it's bad form. I think it's just going to be a really bad spell for them this season. They just need to get over the line. But that mentality in itself is a dangerous one for Leicester City. They need a rebuild, or they're going to slip down the table again next year, and could slip down this year if they're not careful. On the other hand, On the other hand, a team that don't need a rebuild is Brighton. The first takeaway from this match is just how good, you know what I'm going to say, don't you? But I'm going to put forward two names, okay? Estupiñán and Mitoma's relationship is so good. It's getting better with every passing week. It's almost like they share the same mind at times. Mitoma often made runs in behind towards the byline, but also made movements inside too. Meanwhile, Estupiñán, he'd take up the best possible positions based on the movement of Mitoma, making the left side, it was almost sort of symbiotic, you know, that relationship between the two. For that to occur so quickly is really exciting. There is a different Brighton player that we seem to praise every single week, it feels like. You know, this time it's going to be two. Firstly, Estupiñán. Last week we did Mitoma and Solly March, didn't we? But in particular, Mitoma, who is so classy. I mean, what a goal. But Estupiñán, first and foremost, he has been really good this season. But ever since the World Cup, he seems to have taken it up a gear. Going forward, he's so dynamic. Maybe he's got a bit more, you know, time with De Zerbi now. And as is all of the team right now, they seem to really be clicking into his idea and just the freedom and the attacking kind of exuberance that they show. And he accompanies it with such good end product as well. He claimed the assist for both goals in this game, and his high presence on the left is a cornerstone of their tactical approach. Secondly, Evan Ferguson. Is he the next big thing? Is he the Irish Haaland? Only 8 touches after coming on in the 66th minute, but it was all he needed to score what was a really good header. Gotta love a good header. Just don't see them as much nowadays. The goal itself was excellent, but what happened after the goal is what I think shows where Brighton are as a team right now, because instead of celebrating, the 18-year-old, he went straight into the net, he collected the ball, and he ran to the halfway line. 2 seasons ago, an 88th minute equaliser would have meant huge celebrations for Brighton. But now, they don't view it the same. This, for me, shows where their heads are at currently and how they see themselves as a team. Brighton are only at the start of their project. And I guess the fear is always going to be how many players you're going to lose. But this game was a glimpse into how they're going to be challenging for the top 4. Next season or this season. I'm calling it now. Brighton to go for the top 4. I think it could be this year. I think they have a chance. Why not? They are so exciting going forward. Maybe if they can be that little bit more careful at the back, then maybe. But that's not the De Zerbi way. And something's happening there. I'm telling you now. They're on the march. The Solly March. Please don't go. Liverpool 0, Chelsea 0, 1.4 to 1.65 XG. What was Klopp doing in this one? Let me know, guys. How are you guys all feeling about this? It was not really the result that either wanted. And for a 0-0, there's actually, quite interestingly, a few things to unpack from this match. This was always going to be a tactically interesting game, as both managers are still trying to iron out issues that both have had so far this season. Let's start with Chelsea. Chelsea went for a 4-2-3-1 that sort of morphed into a 3-4-2-1 when they were in possession. It worked well at times. Chelsea were able to create 4 big chances, you know, away from home at Anfield. I think they should be happy with that. But it's not really the same Liverpool, is it, this year? But again, they created more XG from set pieces, 0.92, than they did from open play, which again needs to continue to be a concern because you want Graham Potter creating more from open play. Conor Gallagher was again utilised as their sort of midfield interrupter, you know. He was sort of attempting so many ground duels, 16 ground duels against Liverpool, but only successful on 4 of those occasions. But it was his movement in possession that was also really interesting. You can see from his heat map that he was all over the pitch, which is the best use of Conor Gallagher. But there's one specific part which I noticed during the game that was a target for him, and he was targeting Robertson in behind. This was something actually I was talking about in my match reaction video from the Man United perspective, where you have Anthony and Bruno Fernandes, and if Bruno Fernandes would be willing to do that sort of Conor Gallagher sacrificial runs. Check out that video when you get a chance where we talk about that and see if that is something that would work or something that they need at Man United when it comes to Anthony. These second man runs behind Robertson gave Ziyech so much more space to cross the ball, and Ziyech attempted 11 crosses against Liverpool, and there was no one higher than him when it came to crosses. Now on to Liverpool, and when I was watching the game I noticed something new Liverpool were doing from a tactical perspective. This is what it looked like. When Liverpool's centre-backs had the ball, Bajcetic would not drop deep to collect it, and neither would Keita and Thiago as the 2-8s. Instead, Thiago and Keita took up really advanced positions, almost like Man City did a few seasons ago. And whilst I appreciate the idea, it simply didn't work, and there's a big reason behind it. There was no press when they lost the ball. And when Liverpool lost the ball, they reverted to type a bit and dropped off instead of frantically trying to win it back. And that's why they kind of cancelled each other out a little bit. This tactic was also flawed because neither Konaté nor Gomez looked comfortable with the ball, and Gomez specifically made a few mistakes in possession. Another mistake I felt that Klopp maybe made was that when Nunez came on, he continued to play Gakpo as a sort of central striker and played Nunez on the left-hand side. I felt like that was a little bit strange just because Gakpo looked really awkward up top on his own, and the position's going to take a little bit of time for him to get used to as Liverpool are in flux right now. So maybe Nunez sort of starting there would have made a little bit more sense. I kind of get it because I like actually Gakpo more as a central striker, but it wasn't working, and that Liverpool failed to create a single big chance in this match. And it feels like this new tactical approach, I don't think that'll last too long, but I still think we're searching for answers when it comes to Liverpool. Liverpool fans, let me know how you're feeling about this game and the whole situation at the moment. What is the answer? What's the way forward? Is it one where it's just going to be growing pains? Does Klopp need to kind of decide on one tactic and stick with it? Does he need to revert to his philosophy and move forward with that? What needs to happen here? Crystal Palace 0, Newcastle 0, 0.30 to 1.25. Is there a cause for concern for Newcastle? I mean, just zoom out for a second, guys. No, spoiler alert, no. But on the pitch, I did say, I've said it a few times, and I know it winds people up, the tensing. The tensing. It's something that happens. We're sort of drifting into February now. It's going to happen. And is it going to happen to Newcastle? It's going to happen to some teams, and other teams will use that fear as fuel. You know, often that's why you see the teams down the bottom starting to win games. But we talk about it a lot on this channel, and I guess the question is, are we seeing the first signs of this, or will Newcastle be fine when it comes to securing that top 4 spot? Now, before talking about this, let's talk about the performance, because I thought Newcastle actually played really well and got forward well, but lacked the final touch in the box. Newcastle had a total of 16 shots in this game, and most of them were well-crafted opportunities that they would have scored on another day, or could have scored a few. And maybe on other days they haven't created those kind of chances and have scored goals. And so it's one of those where it's just the way that it goes sometimes. But the momentum bar, it shows Newcastle's dominance in an away game, let's remember. Joelinton had 2 fantastic chances, but Guaita denied him twice. Speaking of which, Guaita was phenomenal in this game. The Palace goalkeeper made 7 saves. 7 to deny Newcastle. And at the other end, actually, Nick Pope made a really, really fantastic save. One of the saves of the season as well, to keep the score 0-0, where Palace might have pinched it. And whilst Palace were quiet going forwards, there's one person that I think is worth a little bit of praise that probably people won't go for. You've got Guaita, of course, but Chris Richards as well, because before this game, he'd only started one other Premier League match. You wouldn't have been able to guess that with the way that he played. He dealt with pretty much everything that came his way. He won 75% of his aerial duels and 66% of his ground duels. He looks like he could develop into a brilliant defender given a little bit of time, which bodes really well for Crystal Palace. And again, them getting their recruitment right with exciting young players. So to answer the question of should Newcastle be worried, no, you've got more money than the whole world put together. Not sure if someone can fact check that, but you know what I mean. You got loads of money, and you're actually doing it in a thoughtful way right now. So I think the problem will be, and I think I saw it in Eddie Howe's interview, you know, are you disappointed? Is that 2 points dropped? Is that 1 point gained? He doesn't know. So I think that kind of bit of confusion as to where you are and what's good enough, we're sort of heading into those months, and we will see. It'll be interesting to see. I think the great thing is that they can lean on that back line so good defensively that will get them points. But will they get enough wins, or will they start to draw a few too many? That would be my negative thought on Newcastle. The positive for Newcastle is that Isak is now back to full fitness, it seems, and with him starting matches in the future, you'd think that he'd score more than he misses given the glimpses we saw before his injury. So don't panic, okay? Don't. So there you have it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the fallout. If you did, why not check out the previous episodes where we have a little tactical look each week. Of course, we've got all the match reaction stuff and loads of stuff coming up this week as well. So keep it locked, hit subscribe, hit like button on your way out, and let me know your thoughts on your team in the comments down below.